Welcome back, everyone, to another installment of AFF-CNY's pre-conference interview series. I am Shemin Vizzi. So let's take a look at this next workshop presenter. And the title of their workshop is called Wise Pathways for Hurting, Helping, Hoping, and Healing. That is our theme for the conference this year. So let's check out this interview. Welcome back, everyone. We have with us our next workshop presenter. John, why don't you take a second, introduce who you are, and maybe tell us how you're connected to adoption or foster care.
Okay. So I am a therapist working in the field of adoption and foster care. I'm also an adopted person myself, and I have two stepchildren who are adopted, and I am in reunion with my birth family. So I have a lot of different ways that I'm connected to this. Worked in the field a long time, really enjoy the work. Do think it's a very particular area. It takes a real knowledge of this territory, I think. And some people have that, and we're trying to help more people have that. So glad to be a part of that.
When you started, I see on your bio, because a lot of people are going to be able to read it, and you studied child psychology at the University of Minnesota. But how did that lead you into being a mental health counselor, adoption psychotherapist? I mean, you have a lot of hats and a lot of specialties, and I'm sure because of the clients and people that you see, you started wearing more hats to do with adoption and foster care and trauma and everything. Did you start off wanting to deal with to do with that, or did that just
I think doing my own psychotherapy to deal with my own adoption issues really opened the door to me understanding both the value of therapy and how much there is to adoption. You know, I was one of those people who felt a lot of things about it, but everything around me was adoption's great. And I'm very thankful for the parents that I've had. I'm also thankful for birth family that I've been able to meet and have relationship with. And, you know, there can be ups and downs to that, but it's just so different from how society talks about it. So I did want to be someone who could be there for people like some people have been there for me. And so I think right at the outset of a career in counseling, adoption was front and center. And I'd gotten work as a director of counseling at a adoption group, you know, a group that worked a lot with adopted children and families and parents. So that kind of got me running right from the get-go. And then when I went to the University of Minnesota, it was the thought of maybe doing more clinical research in that area. So I did that for a while, but decided I really wanted to do the clinical work, work with actual people more than do the studying, although that still calls to me a bit. So I kind of like the combination, actually.
personally, for everyone else to know, I've actually seen John present before. You did, please correct me if I'm wrong, transgenerational trauma. Is that correct? I think you're the, there was a presentation that you did on that. So you definitely wear a lot of hats and you present on different subjects, which is great. Why did you think, let's go into your topic for this year. It's called Wise Pathways for Hurting, Helping, Hoping, and Healing, which is our theme. But tell us a little bit about what you're going to be discussing. Why do you feel that this is the topic you wanted to bring to the forefront this year?
Well, it's interesting. I just done a workshop with Lisa, my wife, down in Alabama earlier this year, full day workshops on grieving. And that had some of these same themes. But when I looked at the theme of the conference, it's always fun to see, you know, what you can come up with related to the conference theme. And, you know, hurting, healing, helping, healing, or hoping rather. Hard to get all those.
That's why I have it written next to me.
A little tongue twister. You know, it made me think about some of the things that I've come to or worked with people who have brought it to me. You know, I think as a therapist, you're learning as much from people as maybe they learn from you. Perhaps maybe you're just kind of a broker of exchange of information that you gather as people pass through your office. But I think there are complexities to each of these areas that are kind of interesting and compelling, I think. Where does the hurt come from? Our write-up for the workshop, for the whole conference, seemed to talk not only about personal trauma, but institutional trauma, some of the things that could go better there. Intergenerational trauma is another one, cultural trauma. So trying to touch on the variety of hurt and how hurt needs healing. And when we get into healing, well, I have a lot to say about that, where we often bump into issues like unconditional love, conditional love, how to grieve in a way that is healing rather than that becomes a loop where you get kind of stuck in it, where you're not relieving, but just reliving. And, a lot of healing comes from stability, but also we want to maybe do some deep dive work and really go into our protected interior where a lot of the hurt sits right at the core of you and might get in the way of how you do relationships, how you relate to yourself even. So having worked with, I don't know, dozens, maybe hundreds of adoptees, adoptive parents, some birth parents, adoptive families, I think a lot of key themes come up in how healing works best. I'd love to share some of that. When we get to helping can sometimes feel like, just go for it, help, love people. I just talked about love, right? But a lot has to do with self-love, and helping often works better if we know our place in the helping, some of the boundaries, so we don't get burned out. What is our influence? It's not infinite. What can we give? What expectations are we setting? Maybe we don't need to have expectations. Sometimes if you overfunction for people, it leads to underfunctioning, or as I said before, burnout. Maybe if somebody's really hurting, it doesn't mean you have to fill that pain with your love like it's a liquid filling that emptiness. Certainly you can do some of that, but maybe you don't have to overcompensate or be perfect or make sure it's all there or feel like you failed if it doesn't get all healed. More about what's the right zone. Maybe it's about just being good enough and being reliable. And then lastly, hoping. I think hope is always in a dynamic tension with realism. We want to be realistic, but not to the point that we feel despair and have no hope. But sometimes if we pump up hope and it turns into a dream, it might even become a rigid expectation, and that actually is not helpful. So how to do hope in a clean way where it's really helping and inspiring, and not flipping on you and becoming something that becomes its own area of difficulty or its own conundrum.
So my last question, I love asking, explain to everyone why everyone in the community would benefit from coming to see you at your workshop and what they would learn, from professionals to parents to foster parents. Why is this something that everyone should listen to?
Well, I think we're all living it. It might even be helpful for you, whether you are directly in foster care or adoption or not. Probably most people attending the conference have some connection to it. And I think if we live it, if we breathe it, if we can feel it, I want to make it more, personal, more into the experience of what people and families are going through. I think it just gives you more ability in the moment, whether it's with yourself or with somebody else. Some of these things aren't as straightforward as they would seem. I think they're a little more complicated, a little more nuanced, and they don't have to be turned into rocket science. But if you can just know a few of the conundrums, the paradoxes, the seeming contradictions or catch-22s, know how to navigate that, I think it goes a long way making this all a lot more manageable and kind of a quicker road to, I don't know if I want to say success exactly, but directionally correct, going the right direction at a reasonable pace. That might be as good as it gets, and being comfortable with that. So I think it really can benefit people to get some of these nuances down.